The loft stopped feeling temporary and started feeling like home. Like mine. Like a space I'd built for myself instead of compromise and shared decisions. 6 months later, I still notice elevators. Can't help it. Every time I hear that ding, some part of my brain does a quick threat assessment like I'm a veteran with PTSD, except my war zone was a hospital corridor and my enemy was infidelity. But here's the weird thing. When the doors close now, I smile. Not because I'm happy about what happened. I'm not some kind of psychopath who enjoys trauma, but because I survived it. More than survived it, actually. I built something new from the wreckage. My loft has better light than the house ever did, even if my plants are still struggling with my commitment issues. The podcast hit 10,000 subscribers last month, which is apparently enough to qualify as moderately successful in the world of people talking into microphones about their life disasters. I've interviewed everyone from a woman who discovered her husband's affair through a joint Amazon account to a guy who found out his wife was catfishing him as someone else online just to see if he'd cheat. Humanity is messy and weird, and I'm documenting it one episode at a time. The consulting work with Donovan's company turned into a regular gig. I'm essentially the guy they call when they need someone to explain compliance in a way that doesn't make people want to fake their own deaths to escape the training session. I've developed a reputation for being the fraud guy who makes spreadsheets entertaining, which is not the legacy I imagined at 25, but I'll take it. Henna texts sometimes. Brief messages that read like leftover wrapping paper from a gift nobody wanted. Apology fragments that don't quite form complete sentences. I know I messed up. I should have been honest. I hope you're doing okay. I don't reply because what would I even say? Thanks for the emotional devastation. It really helped me discover my true calling as a podcast host. Some bridges aren't worth rebuilding. They're just kindling for the fire that keeps you warm while you build something better. She had the baby, by the way. A girl. I know because Maya told me, having somehow maintained a bizarre surveillance network that would make the CIA jealous. Henna's living with her parents now, working some administrative job that probably pays a fraction of what she made before she decided corporate fraud was a good hobby. Liam never came back. Last I heard through the rumor mill that refuses to leave me alone, he's engaged to someone else in San Francisco. Apparently, his desire for instant family only applied when it was convenient. I don't feel bad for Hannah. That probably makes me a terrible person, but I've made peace with it. Dr. Chin says I'm allowed to protect my own emotional well-being, that empathy doesn't require self-sacrifice. I'm still working on believing that, but I'm getting there one therapy session at a time. Maya had her baby, a boy she named Dylan who screams like he's auditioning for a death metal band, but is otherwise perfect. I'm Uncle Aaron now, which comes with responsibilities like changing diapers and pretending to understand baby talk and buying tiny shoes that cost more than adult shoes for reasons that defy economic logic. Maya insists I'm Dylan's favorite person, which I know is a lie because babies don't have preferences beyond feed me and stop making that noise, but I appreciate the sentiment. Nora's running a podcast network now, which happened accidentally when she helped me launch Floor 4 Stories and realized she was good at the business side of content creation. She's managing 6 shows, mine included, and making enough money to quit her corporate job and work from home in pajamas. Living the dream, as they say. Sloane's on a billboard near the waterfront advertising her services with the tagline, "Ruthless but fair," which is both accurate and slightly terrifying. She sends me a Christmas card every year now, which feels like being pen pals with a very efficient shark. The divorce finalized 3 months ago. Clean break, split assets, no alimony because Sloane is a wizard and Hannah wasn't in a position to negotiate. I signed the papers in Sloane's office, walked out, and felt nothing except maybe relief. Like closing a book I'd already finished reading. I'm dating again, which is exactly as awkward as it sounds. Turns out my ex-wife committed corporate fraud, and I exposed it at a charity gala, is not a great first date story, so I've learned to lead with literally anything else. I went out with a graphic designer named Emma last week who laughed at my jokes and didn't seem traumatized by my emotional baggage. We're getting coffee next weekend. Baby steps. The elevator in my building goes to the 8th floor, which feels appropriately symbolic. Higher than the 4th floor where everything fell apart. High enough to have a view, low enough to still feel grounded. I ride it every day, sometimes multiple times, and it's just an elevator. Just a metal box that moves between floors. No hidden revelations, No life-changing disasters. Just transportation. I learned that betrayal can be a horrible teacher, but also an effective motivator. That spreadsheets are therapeutic. That revenge is a dish best served with proper citations and a backup drive. That starting over at 34 isn't failure. It's just a plot twist in a story that's still being written. The elevator dinged. I stepped inside, pressed 8, and watched the doors close on another normal day in a life I never planned, but somehow ended up building anyway. Full of bad jokes, better coffee, podcasting equipment, and zero tolerance for people who think lying is easier than honesty. Hannah got her elevator moment that changed everything. Now I'm having mine, except mine goes up. 6 months later, I still notice elevators. Can't help it. Every time I hear that ding, some part of my brain does a quick threat assessment like I'm a veteran with PTSD, except my war zone was a hospital corridor and my enemy was infidelity. But here's the weird thing. When the doors close now, I smile. Not because I'm happy about what happened. I'm not some kind of psychopath who enjoys trauma, but because I survived it. More than survived it, actually. I built something new from the wreckage. My loft has better light than the house ever did, even if my plants are still struggling with my commitment issues. The podcast hit 10,000 subscribers last month, which is apparently enough to qualify as moderately successful in the world of people talking into microphones about their life disasters. I've interviewed everyone from a woman who discovered her husband's affair through a joint Amazon account to a guy who found out his wife was catfishing him as someone else online just to see if he'd cheat. Humanity is messy and weird, and I'm documenting it one episode at a time. The consulting work with Donovan's company turned into a regular gig. I'm essentially the guy they call when they need someone to explain compliance in a way that doesn't make people want to fake their own deaths to escape the training session. I've developed a reputation for being the fraud guy who makes spreadsheets entertaining, which is not the legacy I imagined at 25, but I'll take it. Hannah texts sometimes. Brief messages that read like leftover wrapping paper from a gift nobody wanted. Apology fragments that don't quite form complete sentences. I know I messed up. I should have been honest. I hope you're doing okay. I don't reply because what would I even say? Thanks for the emotional devastation. It really helped me discover my true calling as a podcast host. Some bridges aren't worth rebuilding. They're just kindling for the fire that keeps you warm while you build something better. She had the baby, by the way. A girl. I know because Maya told me, having somehow maintained a bizarre surveillance network that would make the CIA jealous. Hannah's living with her parents now, working some administrative job that probably pays a fraction of what she made before she decided corporate fraud was a good hobby. Liam never came back. Last I heard through the rumor mill that refuses to leave me alone, he's engaged to someone else in San Francisco. Apparently, his desire for instant family only applied when it was convenient. I don't feel bad for Hannah. That probably makes me a terrible person, but I've made peace with it. Dr. Chin says I'm allowed to protect my own emotional well-being, that empathy doesn't require self-sacrifice. I'm still working on believing that, but I'm getting there one therapy session at a time. Maya had her baby, a boy she named Dylan who screams like he's auditioning for a death metal band, but is otherwise perfect. I'm Uncle Aaron now, which comes with responsibilities like changing diapers and pretending to understand baby talk and buying tiny shoes that cost more than adult shoes for reasons that defy economic logic. Maya insists I'm Dylan's favorite person, which I know is a lie because babies don't have preferences beyond feed me and stop making that noise, but I appreciate the sentiment. Nora's running a podcast network now, which happened accidentally when she helped me launch Floor 4 Stories and realized she was good at the business side of content creation. She's managing 6 shows, mine included, and making enough money to quit her corporate job and work from home in pajamas. Living the dream, as they say. Sloane's on a billboard near the waterfront advertising her services with the tagline, "Ruthless but fair," which is both accurate and slightly terrifying. She sends me a Christmas card every year now, which feels like being pen pals with a very efficient shark. The divorce finalized 3 months ago. Clean break, split assets, no alimony because Sloane is a wizard and Hannah wasn't in a position to negotiate. I signed the papers in Sloane's office, walked out, and felt nothing except maybe relief. Like closing a book I'd already finished reading. I'm dating again, which is exactly as awkward as it sounds. Turns out my ex-wife committed corporate fraud, and I exposed it at a charity gala. is not a great first date story, so I've learned to lead with literally anything else. I went out with a graphic designer named Emma last week who laughed at my jokes and didn't seem traumatized by my emotional baggage. We're getting coffee next weekend. Baby steps. The elevator in my building goes to the 8th floor, which feels appropriately symbolic. Higher than the 4th floor where everything fell apart. High enough to have a view, low enough to still feel grounded. I ride it every day, sometimes multiple times, and it's just an elevator. Just a metal box that moves between floors. No hidden revelations, no life-changing disasters. Just transportation. I learned that betrayal can be a horrible teacher, but also an effective motivator. That spreadsheets are therapeutic. That revenge is a dish best served with proper citations and a backup drive. That starting over at 34 isn't failure. It's just a plot twist in a story that's still being written. The elevator dinged. I stepped inside, pressed 8, and watched the doors close on another normal day in a life I never planned, but somehow ended up building anyway. Full of bad jokes, better coffee, podcasting equipment, and zero tolerance for people who think lying is easier than honesty. Hannah got her elevator moment that changed everything. Now I'm having mine, except mine goes up. Her work meetings were in blue. Her yoga classes were in green. Her therapy appointments, oh, the irony, were in purple. And then there were the gray blocks. Dozens of them, scattered throughout the past 6 months like landmines in a field I'd been walking through blindfolded. Client dinner, Henderson account, red one from 3 weeks ago. I pulled up the bank statement for that date. $93 at an Italian place, plus a charge from that same Starbucks near the waterfront 30 minutes later. 2 coffees, 2 pastries. Very romantic. Very not about the Henderson account, which I happened to know had been closed 2 months ago because Hannah had complained about it over dinner, actual dinner, with me, in our house, like she was living some kind of double-life sitcom. I clicked through more gray blocks. Evening client meeting. Late presentation prep. Networking event. Each one matched a pattern of charges that had nothing to do with work and everything to do with building a cozy little nest with Liam while I was home watching Netflix and thinking my biggest problem was whether we needed to refinance the mortgage. Then I made the mistake of checking her Instagram. Not her main one. I'd been looking at that regularly, seeing the carefully curated photos of our life together, brunches and hiking trips, and the dog we'd adopted last year. No, I went digging through her tagged photos, the ones other people post that don't always get filtered through your own narrative control. That's where I found him. Liam, tagged in a photo from 4 months ago at some rooftop bar, part of a group shot with Hannah's work friends. He had his arm around her waist. Her head was tilted toward his shoulder. They looked like a couple. They looked happy. The caption read, "Best team ever. Hashtag work family, hashtag blessed." I scrolled back further. There he was again, at a company picnic I'd been too busy to attend because of my own work deadline. And again, at what looked like a weekend hiking trip. Hannah had told me it was a girls' trip with her college friends. Apparently girls now included 6-foot-tall dudes named Liam with excellent jawlines and a complete disregard for the sanctity of marriage. My brain was doing that thing where it turns every memory into evidence. That weekend she'd come home with mud on her hiking boots and stories about the trail. She'd been with him. The time she'd gotten food poisoning and texted me not to come home early because she didn't want me to see her sick, probably wasn't food poisoning. The new lingerie I'd found in her drawer and assumed was a nice surprise for me. Yeah, that one stung like a wasp at a picnic. I opened our credit card statements, both cards, hers and mine, and started building a spreadsheet because apparently heartbreak turns you into an accountant. Date, merchant, amount, location. I cross-referenced everything with her calendar. The pattern was so obvious I couldn't believe I'd missed it. Every client dinner corresponded with charges at romantic restaurants. Every work event lined up with purchases at wine bars and dessert places. There was even a charge from 3 months ago at a boutique baby store for $67. $67. At a baby store. 3 months ago. Which meant this wasn't some spontaneous accident. This wasn't it just happened. This was planned. They'd been shopping for baby stuff before she even got pregnant. Or maybe she'd been pregnant longer than I thought, and the timeline she'd given me was just another lie in a tower of lies so tall it could have its own weather system. I found the receipt, thank God for online banking and obsessive record keeping, and zoomed in on the itemized list. A twin stroller cover. Not even a regular stroller cover. A twin stroller cover, like they were already planning for some future where they'd have multiple kids, and I'd be. What? A footnote? A cautionary tale? The first husband who didn't work out? The really pathetic part was that I'd noticed the credit card charges before. I'd seen the numbers, the unfamiliar restaurants, the random purchases. But Hannah always had an explanation. Work dinner, they're reimbursing me. Client gift, don't worry about it. That boutique charge? I bought your sister a baby gift, wanted to surprise you. And I believed her because why wouldn't I? I trusted her. I'd made vows with her. I'd bought a house with her. I'd built my entire adult life around the assumption that we were partners. Around 3 a.m., I found the real smoking gun. The one that turned this from my wife cheated into my wife committed fraud. I was digging through her email. Yes, I knew her password. We'd shared passwords because we were transparent and trusting, and other words that now taste like ashes. When I found correspondence with her company's accounting department, the subject line read, Expense Report, Client Hospitality. Inside was a detailed expense report billing the apartment charges to her company under Client Hospitality Services. She'd classified the Riverside luxury apartment as a corporate rental for out-of-town clients and had been getting reimbursed every month. $850 plus utilities paid for by her employer under the guise of legitimate business expenses. That's not just cheating. That's fraud. Like actual criminal fraud. The kind of thing that doesn't just end your marriage. It ends your career, your reputation, and possibly your freedom if the company decides to press charges. I sat back in my chair, staring at the email, feeling something shift inside me. The hurt was still there, sharp and fresh like a paper cut that won't stop stinging. But underneath it was something new. Anger. Not the hot, explosive kind that makes you throw things and yell. The cold kind. The calculating kind. The kind that makes you screenshot everything, save it to 3 different cloud services, and start thinking about next steps. Hannah had built this house of cards. She'd used company money, lied on expense reports, created fake paper trails, and involved her employer in her affair. She'd been so confident, so certain she wouldn't get caught, that she'd left a digital breadcrumb trail a toddler could follow. I opened a new document and started writing everything down. Times, dates, amounts, locations. Who knew what? Who didn't? What could be proven? What was just suspicion? By the time the sun started creeping through the kitchen windows, I had a 15-page document that read like a corporate investigation report. My phone buzzed. Maya, you okay? You left so fast yesterday. I typed back, define okay. If okay means I spent the night becoming an accountant-detective hybrid, then sure. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Come to my place. Bring the laptop. We need to talk. I closed my computer, drained the last of my cold coffee, and stood up. My back hurt from hunching over the table for 5 hours. My eyes burned from staring at screens. But my mind was clear. Crystal clear. I wasn't just the betrayed husband anymore. I was the guy with the receipts. And that, as it turns out, changes everything. Maya's apartment smelled like cinnamon rolls and vengeance, which is a weird combination, but somehow perfectly on brand for her. She opened the door before I could knock. Twin telepathy, or just the fact that she'd been watching through the peephole, hard to say, and pulled me inside like she was extracting a hostage from enemy territory. You look like garbage, she said, which is twin speak for, I love you, and I'm worried. I feel like garbage that other garbage wouldn't even associate with, I replied, setting my laptop on her kitchen counter and collapsing onto her couch, which was infinitely more comfortable than the kitchen chair I'd spent the night in. But garbage with evidence, so that's something. She was already brewing coffee, the good kind she imports from some obscure roaster in Seattle that she swears is life-changing. Pregnancy hadn't slowed her down one bit. If anything, she was moving with the focused intensity of someone on a mission. She poured 2 mugs, handed me one, and sat down with her own laptop like we were about to have the world's most depressing business meeting. Show me everything, she said. So I did. I walked her through the bank statements, the calendar blocks, the Instagram photos, the apartment lease, the expense reports. Every piece of evidence I'd compiled in my 5-hour spiral session. Maya's face went through several emotions. Shock, anger, disgust, and finally settling on something that looked dangerously close to predatory satisfaction. Oh, Aaron, she said when I finished. and her voice had that particular quality that meant someone was about to have a very bad day, and it wasn't going to be me. She's so screwed. Yeah, well, I'm pretty screwed too, I pointed out. My marriage is over. My wife is pregnant with another guy's kid. I have to figure out divorce lawyers and property division and… Stop, Maya interrupted, holding up one hand like a traffic cop. You're thinking like a victim. We need to think like prosecutors. Hannah didn't just cheat. She committed fraud. Corporate fraud. With documentation. She handed you a gift-wrapped case on a silver platter. I blinked at her. When did you become a legal expert? I'm not. But I know people. She grinned, and it was slightly terrifying. Starting with Jessica from the ultrasound clinic yesterday. You know, the nurse who was super chatty while we waited? She recognized Hannah's name when I mentioned it this morning. You called the ultrasound nurse about my cheating wife. I texted. Less traceable. Anyway, Jessica says Hannah's been coming to that same clinic for prenatal appointments. Started about 8 weeks ago. Always comes with the same guy, tall, dark hair, expensive watch. They hold hands in the waiting room. The receptionist, Donna, said they registered under his insurance, not yours. I processed this information while my coffee went cold in my hands. They're playing house. Actual house, with shared insurance and prenatal vitamins, and probably one of those apps that tells you what size fruit your baby is. A peach, currently, Maya said. According to the timeline Jessica mentioned, which means Hannah's further along than she probably told you yesterday. The hits just kept coming. I'd gone from happily married to divorced in progress to finding out my wife had been lying about even basic facts like how pregnant she was. At this rate, I'd discover she was actually a Russian spy by dinner time. Maya was already typing furiously on her laptop, her pregnancy brain fog apparently taking a vacation when detective work was involved. Okay, so I also texted Brianna. You remember her, the barista at that coffee place near Powell's? She has an insane memory for faces. I sent her a description of Liam and asked if she'd seen him with a blonde woman matching Hannah's description. Please tell me you didn't tell her why you were asking. I told her I was doing research for a true crime podcast, which isn't entirely untrue. This is pretty criminal. She turned her screen toward me. Brianna says they're regulars. Every Wednesday and Friday morning for the past 4 months. They order the same thing, 2 cappuccinos, 1 almond croissant, 1 chocolate croissant. They sit at the corner table. They're super cute together, apparently, which makes me want to throat punch someone. Get in line, I muttered. The doorbell rang. Maya bounced up with surprising agility for someone carrying a human and opened it to reveal Nora Chun, my work buddy and the person most likely to have my back in any corporate disaster. She was holding a file folder and wearing what I called her business warrior face, the one she used in meetings when someone tried to take credit for her ideas. Maya texted me. Nora said by way of greeting, walking in and dropping the folder on the coffee table. Said you needed help burning your wife's life down. I'm in. Also, I brought ammunition. You two are terrifying, I said, though I was secretly grateful. Heartbreak is easier when you have a team. Nora sat down and opened the folder. So I did some digging at work. Casual digging, nothing that'll get me fired, and pulled up some public information about Hannah's company. They take expense fraud seriously. Like, fire you and prosecute you seriously. Last year, they canned a regional manager for falsifying travel expenses. Made an example of him. It was in all the business journals. How is this helping me feel better? I asked. It's not supposed to make you feel better. It's supposed to give you leverage. Nora pulled out a printed article about the expense fraud case. If Hannah's been billing that apartment as client hospitality, and you have proof it's actually her love nest, her company will be very interested. Especially since they're paying taxes on it as a business expense. Maya leaned forward. So we're not just talking divorce. We're talking potential criminal charges. We're talking leverage, Nora corrected. Aaron doesn't have to press charges. But the threat of it? The proof that he could? That changes the entire negotiation. She can't exactly fight for alimony or a favorable settlement when she's committed fraud using company resources. I sat there, absorbing this information while my coffee went from cold to room temperature to basically iced. 24 hours ago, my biggest concern was whether to get Thai or pizza for dinner. Now I was sitting in my sister's apartment with 2 women plotting corporate espionage and legal strategy like we were planning a heist. There's one more thing, Maya said, pulling up something on her phone. I might have made friends with the building manager at Riverside Luxury Apartments. How did you? You know what? I don't want to know. His name is Keith. He's 63, recently divorced, loves to talk, and hates people who abuse the system. I told him I was considering renting there and asked about the neighborhood. Got him talking about the tenants. Turns out, he remembers Hannah and Liam. They signed a 6-month lease in April under Liam's name, but Hannah's name is on the utility accounts. Keith just told you this. Keith had 3 beers and a captive audience. People love to gossip, Aaron, especially when they think they're helping someone make an informed decision. She grinned. He also mentioned that his building has security cameras in the lobby and parking garage. Footage gets stored for 90 days before it's overwritten. Nora looked at Maya with something like admiration. You got all this in one conversation? I'm 8 months pregnant and look harmless. People tell me everything. Maya turned to me. The question is, do you want the footage? Because Keith seems like the kind of guy who might accidentally give access to someone doing their due diligence. I looked at both of them. Maya, fierce and protective despite being ready to pop out a kid any day. Nora, armed with corporate knowledge and a personal vendetta against injustice. They'd assembled a case stronger than anything I could have built alone, and we hadn't even brought in actual legal help yet. Yeah, I said finally. Get the footage. Get everything. If Hannah wants to play games, we'll show her what a real game looks like. Maya raised her coffee mug. To the Midnight Research Club. Nora clinked hers against it. To receipts and revenge. I joined in, feeling something shift. I wasn't just surviving this anymore. I was strategizing. And that, somehow, felt like progress. Turns out, heartbreak is an excellent motivator for becoming proficient in Microsoft Excel. Who knew? Certainly not my high school computer teacher, Mr. Patterson, who once told me I'd never amount to anything if I couldn't master a pivot table. Well, Mr. Patterson, joke's on you. I just created a pivot table that could end someone's entire career, so I guess Spite is also an excellent teacher. It was Thursday afternoon, 3 days since the elevator incident that ruined my life, and I was sitting in Maya's living room surrounded by enough evidence to fill a filing cabinet and enough coffee to fuel a small army. Nora had taken a personal day from work, which she claimed was for mental health, but was really for helping Aaron destroy his cheating wife's credibility. Maya was on her laptop cross-referencing dates while eating pickles straight from the jar, because pregnancy cravings are real and apparently very specific. The spreadsheet I'd created was a thing of beauty. Column A, date. Column B, Hannah's calendar entry. Column C, actual activity based on credit card charges. Column D, amount spent. Column E, location. Column F, evidence type, receipt, photo, witness statement, security footage. It was color-coded. It had formulas. It had tabs for different categories of lies. If I was going down, I was going down as the most organized betrayed husband in Portland history. This one's good, Nora said, pointing at her screen. March 15th. Hannah told you she was at a work dinner with the Henderson team. Her calendar says client dinner, Henderson account, but the credit card shows $143 at that French place on 23rd, and I happen to know the Henderson account was serviced by the New York office, not Portland. I added it to the spreadsheet. The lies have lies at this point. It's like Russian nesting dolls of deception. Matryoshka dolls of betrayal, Maya added helpfully, because even when helping ruin my ex-wife's life, she couldn't resist being pretentious about cultural references. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Sloan Winters. Maya gave me your number. I'm a divorce attorney. Can you talk? I showed the text to Maya, who grinned like the Cheshire Cat if the Cheshire Cat was 8 months pregnant and running on pure vindictive energy. I may have reached out to some people. Sloan's the best. She's like if a shark and a calculator had a baby, and that baby went to Yale Law. That's a terrifying description. You want terrifying. Hannah's going to need terrifying. I called the number. Sloan answered on the first ring with a voice that sounded like whiskey and litigation. Aaron Lane? Maya tells me you have an interesting case. I like interesting cases. They keep me young and rich. Define interesting, I said, putting her on speaker so Maya and Nora could listen. Your wife's pregnant with another man's child. She's been using company funds to finance her affair, and you have documentation proving fraud. That's not interesting. That's a prosecutor's wet dream. I assume you want to file for divorce. Among other things. Good. Email me everything you have. I want bank statements, calendar screenshots, emails, witness statements, security footage if you've got it, and a timeline of events. I'll review it, and we'll meet tomorrow. In the meantime, don't engage with Hannah beyond basic logistics. Don't fight, don't argue, definitely don't sleep with her. Not a problem, I said dryly. I'm currently sleeping on my sister's couch to avoid being in the same zip code. Smart man. I'll be in touch. She hung up before I could say goodbye, which I was starting to realize was just how lawyers operated. Efficient, terrifying, and allergic to small talk. Nora was already compiling everything into a folder to send to Sloan. Okay, so we have the financial evidence. We have witness statements from the barista, the building manager, and the ultrasound nurse. Heath came through with the security footage. I've got 3 months worth of Hannah and Liam coming and going from that apartment like they're playing house. Please tell me they're not doing anything gross in the footage, I said. Just hand-holding and looking annoyingly happy. Although there's one clip from June where they're moving in a crib. A crib, Aaron. They bought furniture. I added it to the spreadsheet because at this point, why not? The evidence pile was already taller than my dignity. What else do we need? Maya looked up from her laptop, pickle juice dripping down her chin. We need to verify the expense reports. Nora, can you get copies of Hannah's submissions without raising red flags? Already done. I have a friend in accounting who owes me a favor from when I covered her shift during the Christmas party disaster. She pulled Hannah's expense reports for the last year. Every single one has the Riverside apartment listed as client hospitality. They've been reimbursing her $850 a month, plus utilities, plus a parking fee. I did the math in my head. That's over $12,000 in fraudulent claims. Closer to 13 when you add utilities and parking, Nora corrected. That's felony territory in Oregon. Anything over $1,000 is considered aggravated theft. The room went quiet for a moment as we all absorbed what that meant. Hannah hadn't just cheated. She'd committed a crime. A prosecutable, career-ending, potentially jail-time crime. And she'd done it for 6 months straight, submitting false expense reports every single month like it was just another line item in her budget. Does her company know yet? I asked. No, but they will. Nora's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. Once Sloan files the divorce papers with this evidence attached, it becomes part of the public record. Hannah's employer will see it during any background check. And trust me, companies like hers do regular audits of their employees, especially in finance positions. Maya set down her pickle jar. So we're not just divorcing her. We're ending her career. We're holding her accountable. I corrected, though the distinction felt thin. She made these choices. She falsified documents. She committed fraud. I'm just making sure there are consequences. Damn right, Maya said. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. She wanted to play house with Liam? She can do it from the unemployment line. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was Sloan. Reviewed the preliminary info Maya sent. This is solid. Better than solid. This is airtight. Do you know what leverage is, Aaron? I typed back. The thing that moves the world? The thing that wins divorces. You have it. Hannah doesn't. That changes everything. See you tomorrow at 2. Bring the laptop and your spite. We're going to need both. I showed the text to Maya and Nora. They high-fived, which seemed weirdly celebratory given the circumstances, but I understood the sentiment. For the first time since the elevator doors opened on the 4th floor, I didn't feel powerless. I felt strategic, calculated, like I was building something instead of watching everything fall apart. Nora pulled out her own laptop and opened a fresh document. Okay, so we have the evidence. We have the lawyer. Now we need a plan. What's the end goal here? Just divorce? Or are we going for maximum impact? Define maximum impact, I said carefully. Public exposure. Career destruction. Making sure everyone knows what she did. Nora's eyes gleamed. I'm not saying we should. I'm just saying we could. Maya leaned back, one hand on her belly. Hannah's company is having their annual gala in 3 weeks. Big charity event. All the executives, board members, major clients. Hannah's supposed to give a presentation about the year's accomplishments. How do you know this? I asked. I follow her on LinkedIn. She posted about it last week, all excited about her opportunity to showcase our team's success. Maya made air quotes with her fingers. What if her success showcase became a fraud showcase instead? I looked at both of them. You're suggesting I crash her work event and expose her publicly? I'm suggesting, Maya said carefully, that if someone were to present evidence of financial misconduct at a company event where the board and HR are present, it would be very efficient. One presentation, maximum witnesses, immediate consequences. That's nuclear, I said. She went nuclear first, Nora pointed out. She just didn't realize you'd find the launch codes. I sat with that for a moment, thinking about Hannah's face when she saw me in the elevator. The shock, the fear, the calculation behind her eyes as she tried to figure out how much I knew and how much damage control she'd need. She'd been playing a game where she thought she held all the cards. Time to show her I'd been counting them. Let's do it, I said. Let's burn it all down. Maya raised her pickle jar. To the evil plan. Nora clinked her coffee mug against it. To receipts and reckoning. I joined in, feeling something that might have been joy or might have been vindication or might have been the caffeine finally kicking in after 3 sleepless nights. Whatever it was, it felt like progress. The thing about revenge or justice or accountability or whatever therapeutic term you want to slap on it to make yourself feel less like a villain is that timing is everything. You can have all the evidence in the world, all the receipts and witness statements and spreadsheets color-coded within an inch of their life. But if you don't have the right moment, you're just a guy with a really depressing PowerPoint and nowhere to present it. Which is why, for the next 2.5 weeks, I became a monk of patience, a Zen master of waiting, a human embodiment of the phrase, good things come to those who plot their ex-wife's professional demise with meticulous attention to detail. I met with Sloan 3 times during that period, and each meeting made me more confident that I'd accidentally hired a legal assassin disguised as a divorce attorney. She had this way of reviewing evidence that made me think she was mentally calculating not just how to win, but how to win so thoroughly that Hannah would need therapy just to process the loss. The fraud angle is delicious, she said during our second meeting, spreading documents across her conference table like a general planning a battlefield strategy. Corporate misappropriation of funds, falsified expense reports, using company resources for personal gain. That's not just grounds for termination, that's potential criminal charges. The DA would love this. Are we actually pressing criminal charges? I asked, because there's a difference between wanting your cheating wife to face consequences and wanting to send her to actual prison. Sloan looked at me over her reading glasses, which I'm pretty sure she only wore to increase her intimidation factor. We're keeping that option open. Right now, it's leverage. Hannah doesn't know what we're going to do, which means she can't prepare a defense. Uncertainty is a beautiful weapon, Aaron. Use it. I was learning that lawyers speak in war metaphors, which made sense given that divorce is essentially a civilized form of combat where the casualties are bank accounts and self-esteem instead of actual human lives. During week 2, Maya did what Maya does best. She gathered intelligence like she was working for the CIA instead of being a pregnant architect on maternity leave. She found out through her network of frighteningly well-connected friends that Hannah's company gala was happening at the Sentinel Hotel downtown. Black tie optional. 200 guests including board members, executives, major clients, and the entire senior management team. She's giving a presentation, Maya informed me over FaceTime, looking way too pleased with herself. 20 minutes on innovative solutions in client relations or some other corporate buzzword bingo title. She's the closing speaker before the charity auction. How did you find this out? LinkedIn, the event website, and a very chatty HR coordinator named Beth who I met at a coffee shop and bonded with over pregnancy exhaustion. Beth thinks I'm considering applying for a job there. I'm not, obviously, but Beth doesn't need to know that. You're scary. I prefer thorough. She grinned. Also, guess who else RSVP'd to the gala? I had a sinking feeling I knew where this was going. Hannah and Liam? Bingo. They registered as Hannah Lane and guessed. She didn't even use his name. Just guessed. Like he's a +1 and not the father of her unborn child and the co-conspirator in her fraud scheme. The audacity is almost impressive. I sat with that information for a moment, feeling that familiar cocktail of anger and disbelief that had become my emotional baseline. So they're just going to show up together? At her company event? Where people know she's married? Apparently. Which means either she's planning to announce your separation publicly, or she's monumentally stupid, or both. My money's on both. Nora, who was apparently also on the call but had been silent until now, chimed in. This is perfect, actually. If they're both there, and you present the evidence with both of them in the room, the impact is doubled. No he said, she said, no plausible deniability. Just two people caught red-handed in front of everyone who matters professionally. You guys are enjoying this way too much, I said, though I couldn't entirely disagree with the strategy. You're damn right I'm enjoying it, Nora shot back. Hannah lied to you for 6 months. She stole from her company. She's parading around with her affair partner like it's some kind of romantic comedy instead of a felony. Yeah, I'm enjoying planning her downfall. Sue me. The timeline came together like a heist movie. Sloan would file the divorce papers the morning of the gala, timing it so Hannah would be served right before the event. Maximum stress, minimum time to prepare. I would attend as Maya's +1, since she was invited through her architecture firm's connection to Hannah's company. Nora would be there legitimately as a representative from her own company, which had a corporate partnership with Hannah's firm. We'd be scattered throughout the room, 3 points of a triangle with Hannah at the center, nowhere to run. What about the presentation? I asked Sloan during our final meeting, 3 days before the gala. How do I actually get stage time? She smiled, and it was the kind of smile that probably made opposing counsel consider early retirement. I've been communicating with their legal department about potential fraud in their expense reporting system. They're very interested in my findings. I mentioned you have a comprehensive presentation prepared documenting the scope of the issue. They've agreed to give you 10 minutes after Hannah's presentation. They think you're going to talk about general best practices for preventing expense fraud. They don't know it's about Hannah specifically. They will. In about 3 days. She slid a folder across the desk. Here's your presentation deck. I took your spreadsheets and evidence and turned them into something boardroom appropriate. Every claim is sourced. Every number is verified. It's not slander if it's true, Aaron, and this is very, very true. I opened the folder and found a presentation that looked like it belonged in a forensic accounting seminar. Clean slides, professional fonts, damning evidence presented with the emotional weight of a quarterly earnings report. Dates, amounts, screenshots, security footage stills, all laid out with brutal efficiency. This is intense, I said. This is justice, Sloan corrected. Hannah made choices. Now she gets consequences. Corporate consequences, legal consequences, and social consequences all at once. It's efficient. The night before the gala, Sloan called with one final piece of information that somehow made everything worse and better simultaneously. I did some additional research on Liam, she said without preamble, because apparently lawyers don't believe in greetings. Ran a background check, looked into his social media, talked to some people. Turns out, he's been telling Hannah he wants a future with her. Marriage, kids, the whole package deal. He knows she's already married, right? He knows. He doesn't care. According to my source, another attorney who knows someone in Hannah's office, Liam's been pressuring her to leave you for months. The pregnancy wasn't an accident, Aaron. It was a tactical decision. He wanted to force her hand. I processed this while staring at my ceiling, lying on Maya's couch where I'd been sleeping for 2 weeks because I couldn't stomach being in the house I'd shared with Hannah. So he got her pregnant on purpose. Looks that way, which adds another layer to this whole mess. Hannah's not just a cheater, she's a pawn in someone else's game. Liam wanted a wife and a family, so he made one. With your wife. That's sociopathic. That's ambition meeting opportunity. And now they both get to explain themselves to a room full of executives and board members while their fraud is displayed in 4K resolution on a projector screen. Sloan paused. You ready for this? I thought about the elevator. The ding. The doors opening. Hannah's face when she realized I'd seen everything. The way my life had split into before and after in the span of a heartbeat. Yeah, I said. I'm ready. Good. Wear your best suit. You're not just presenting evidence. You're performing execution. Make it count. I hung up and updated the group chat with Maya and Nora. Tomorrow night. Showtime. Maya responded with a gif of someone dropping a microphone. Nora sent back. Let's burn it down. And me? I laid there thinking about how weird it was that the worst moment of my life was about to become someone else's worst moment, and how that felt less like revenge and more like the universe finally balancing its books. There's something surreal about putting on a tuxedo to ruin someone's life. I stood in Maya's bathroom, adjusting my bow tie for the 3rd time, thinking about how this penguin suit cost more than my first car and was about to be the uniform I wore while detonating my wife's career like a controlled demolition. The irony wasn't lost on me. I looked like I was going to prom, but I was actually going to war. The Sentinel Hotel was doing that thing expensive venues do, where they try to make you forget you're in a hotel by drowning everything in ambient lighting and calling the ballroom a grand pavilion. Crystal chandeliers hung from ceilings that probably cost more than my annual salary, and there were ice sculptures shaped like the company logo because apparently nothing says corporate success like frozen water carved into brand imagery. I walked in with Maya on my arm, her in a maternity dress that somehow made her look like an elegant goddess instead of someone who was approximately 47 months pregnant, and immediately spotted Hannah across the room. She looked good, which was annoying. Hair done, makeup perfect, wearing a dress that probably cost what I spent on groceries for 3 months. Liam was next to her, hand on the small of her back in that possessive way that made me want to throw a shrimp cocktail at his face. They were laughing with a group of executives, playing the part of the happy couple, while I stood there with a USB drive in my pocket that contained enough evidence to end both their careers. Nora appeared at my elbow like a ninja in heels. "You good?" she whispered. "I'm wearing a tux to commit professional murder." "I'm fantastic. That's the spirit." She handed me a glass of champagne I didn't ask for. "Dutch courage. You're on in 40 minutes, right after Hannah's presentation about innovative client relations or whatever corporate nonsense she's peddling." I watched Hannah work the room, greeting board members and shaking hands like she wasn't currently committing fraud and gestating someone else's kid while still legally married to me. The confidence was almost admirable. Almost. Mostly it just made me more determined to watch it crumble. The lights dimmed, and everyone migrated toward their seats. I ended up 3 tables from the stage with a perfect view of Hannah's table, where she sat next to Liam looking radiant and doomed. The company CEO, a silver-haired man named Donovan who looked like he'd been born wearing a suit, gave the opening remarks about quarterly earnings and charitable giving. Then came the awards, the speeches, and finally, Hannah's moment in the spotlight. She walked to the podium with the kind of confidence that comes from thinking you've gotten away with something. Her presentation was smooth, professional, packed with buzzwords about synergy and stakeholder engagement. She clicked through slides showing successful client relationships, revenue growth, and team achievements. The room applauded at appropriate intervals. Liam beamed from his seat like a proud boyfriend at his girlfriend's recital. I felt Maya squeeze my hand under the table. Then Hannah finished, taking a small bow as applause rippled through the room. Donovan returned to the podium, thanking her for her contributions. And then, here's where Sloan's behind-the-scenes maneuvering paid off. He announced that they had a special presentation on corporate compliance and expense management best practices. "Please welcome Aaron Lane, who's prepared some important insights for our team," Donovan said, gesturing to me. I watched Hannah's face drain of color faster than someone had pulled a plug. Her eyes found mine across the room, and I saw the exact moment she realized what was about to happen. It was beautiful in a terrible way, like watching a car accident in slow motion if the car was your ex-wife's credibility. I walked to the podium, connected my laptop, and smiled at 200 people who had no idea they were about to witness a public execution disguised as a PowerPoint presentation. "Good evening," I said, keeping my voice pleasant and professional. "I'm here to talk about expense fraud, using a recent case study that's particularly relevant to this organization." The first slide appeared, a title card that read, "A Study in Corporate Misappropriation, Documentation and Consequences." I clicked to the next slide. Hannah's expense reports, highlighted and annotated. "For the past 6 months," I continued, voice steady despite my heart trying to exit my chest through my throat. "Someone in this organization has been billing personal expenses as corporate hospitality. Specifically, an apartment lease totaling over $13,000, fraudulently categorized as client housing." Another click. Screenshots of the Riverside Luxury Apartments lease agreement with Hannah's signature. Another click. Security footage stills of Hannah and Liam entering the building, time-stamped and dated. Another click. Bank statements showing charges to romantic restaurants on dates marked client dinners in Hannah's calendar. I could hear the murmurs starting, see people turning to look at Hannah's table. She was frozen, face white, while Liam looked like he was calculating the fastest route to the exit. "The documentation is comprehensive," I said, clicking through more slides. "Calendar entries, credit card statements, witness testimony, and security footage all corroborate a pattern of systematic fraud. The perpetrator used company resources to finance a personal relationship while submitting false expense reports for reimbursement. Final click. A photo of Hannah and Liam from the building's security camera, holding hands, clearly not discussing client relations. Questions. I asked the room. Silence. The kind of silence that feels like pressure, like everyone's holding their breath simultaneously. Then Donovan stood up, his face the color of old brick. We'll be launching an immediate investigation. Ms. Lane, please see me in HR after this event. Hannah was crying now, mascara running, while Liam had somehow disappeared, probably out a side door, because coward's gonna coward. I disconnected my laptop, walked off the stage, and felt Maya and Nora flanking me like bodyguards as we headed for the exit. That, Maya whispered, was the most savage thing I've ever witnessed. Poetic justice, Nora added. Served cold, on a projector screen, with witnesses. I didn't look back. Didn't need to. The curtain had fallen, the show was over, and I'd finally gotten my moment of clarity in a ballroom full of people who'd never forget the night someone turned a charity gala into a fraud tribunal. Hannah had wanted an audience for her success. She got one for her downfall instead. Fair trade, if you ask me. The thing about publicly destroying someone's career is that the fallout doesn't happen in slow motion like the buildup does. It happens fast, like dominoes made of reputations and employment contracts, each one knocking down the next with the efficiency of a well-oiled machine designed specifically to ruin lives. By 7 a.m. the next morning, before I'd even finished my first cup of coffee or processed the fact that I'd actually gone through with the nuclear option, my phone started blowing up with texts. Sloan sent a simple message. HR opened formal investigation at 6 a.m. Expect termination by noon. Maya sent a gif of fireworks. Nora sent a news article link with the subject line, "You're famous, kind of." I clicked the link. Some business blogger who'd been at the gala had written a piece titled, "Corporate Accountability Goes Viral: How One Presentation Exposed Systemic Fraud." It was already getting shared on LinkedIn like wildfire, with comments ranging from, "This is what transparency looks like," to, "I can't believe someone actually did this," to, "Is this legal?" Sloan had made sure of that. The article didn't name Hannah specifically, something about defamation laws and ongoing investigations, but it didn't need to. Everyone who'd been in that ballroom knew exactly who I was talking about, and apparently those 200 people had approximately 4,000 collective social media followers who were now all discussing corporate expense fraud like it was the plot of the year's best thriller. By 10 a.m., I got a call from an unknown number that turned out to be Donovan himself, Hannah's now former boss, and the CEO, who'd watched his charity gala turn into a fraud tribunal. I expected anger, maybe threats of a lawsuit for ruining his event. Instead, he sounded tired and weirdly grateful. "Mr. Lane," he said, voice heavy with the exhaustion of a man who'd spent the morning dealing with HR nightmares and board member questions. "I want you to know that we've launched a full audit of our expense reporting system. Ms. Lane has been terminated, effective immediately. We're also pursuing legal action to recover the fraudulent expenses." "I appreciate you telling me," I said, because what else do you say when someone confirms they've just fired your wife? "I also want to apologize," he continued, which threw me. This should have been caught by our internal controls months ago. The fact that it wasn't represents a failure on multiple levels. "We're implementing new oversight procedures," and he paused, and I could hear him choosing his words carefully. "We're looking for someone to help train our staff on identifying red flags in expense reporting. Your presentation was thorough, professional, effective. Would you be interested in consulting work?" I nearly dropped my phone. "You want to hire me? After I just blew up your gala? You exposed fraud in our organization. That's exactly the kind of diligence we need more of. Think about it. Have your attorney contact our legal department if you're interested." He hung up before I could process that my public revenge had somehow turned into a job opportunity. The universe has a weird sense of humor, and apparently it's a fan of irony. By noon, exactly as Sloan predicted, Hannah was officially unemployed. The rumor mill, which in corporate America moves faster than actual information, turned into a wood chipper. People I'd met once at Hannah's company events were suddenly texting me condolences and offering LinkedIn connections. Former colleagues of Hannah's were reaching out to say they'd always thought something was off, and "I'm so sorry this happened to you." which felt less like sympathy and more like people trying to distance themselves from the blast radius. The most surreal message came from someone named Jennifer from Hannah's book club. Just wanted to say we're all shocked, and we're here for you if you need anything. Also, Hannah's been removed from the book club group chat. We're reading Educated next month if you want to join us. I got invited to a book club because my wife committed fraud. That's where I was in life. Maya came over that afternoon with boxes and packing tape because apparently the next step in the your marriage imploded journey was dividing assets and moving out. We'd agreed, or rather, Sloan had informed Hannah's attorney, who'd informed Hannah, that I'd be moving to a smaller place while the house got listed and sold. Community property laws meant we'd split everything 50-50, except Hannah wasn't exactly in a position to negotiate given the whole fraud situation. You doing okay? Maya asked, wrapping coffee mugs and newspaper like we were preparing for the world's saddest garage sale. Define okay, I said, taping up a box labeled kitchen stuff I actually use. If okay means I just watched my wife's career combust in real time and got offered consulting work by her former employer, then yeah, I'm peachy. Maya stopped packing and looked at me with those twin eyes that see through every defense mechanism I've ever built. Erin, real talk. How are you actually feeling? I sat down on the floor, surrounded by boxes and bubble wrap and the physical evidence of a life I was dismantling. Honestly, I don't know. Like I should feel worse than I do. I just ended Hannah's career. She's pregnant, unemployed, and probably facing criminal charges. That's heavy. That's life-ruining. But I also can't find it in me to feel bad about it because she did this. All of it. The cheating, the fraud, the lying. I just made sure there were consequences. Maya sat down next to me, which was impressive given her current gravitational situation. She was quiet for a moment. Then she did something I'd only seen her do maybe 3 times in our entire 34 years of existence. She cried. Not dramatic, attention-seeking tears. Silent, life-altering tears that rolled down her cheeks while she stared at a box of kitchen utensils like they held the secrets of the universe. I'm proud of you, she said finally, voice thick. Not for the revenge part. Okay, maybe a little for the revenge part because that was objectively amazing, but for standing up for yourself. For not just taking it. For being the kind of person who documents everything and builds a case and fights back. I learned from the best, I said, bumping her shoulder with mine. You would have done the same thing. Damn right I would have. She wiped her eyes and stood up with the grace of a baby elephant learning to walk. Now let's finish packing your stuff so you can get out of this house and start fresh. We packed for 3 more hours, sorting through 6 years of accumulated life debris. Wedding photos went in a box marked storage because I wasn't ready to look at them, but also wasn't ready to burn them. Hannah's stuff stayed untouched. She could deal with her own belongings. My books, my clothes, my random collection of coffee mugs from cities I'd visited. All of it got wrapped and boxed and labeled for a new life I hadn't planned, but was apparently living anyway. Nora showed up around 6 with pizza and news that the blog post she'd written about a friend's experience with corporate fraud and personal betrayal had gone semi-viral in certain circles. I kept it anonymous, she assured me. But people are eating it up. Someone called it the most satisfying revenge story since the Count of Monte Cristo, which I think is a compliment. It's definitely a compliment, Maya said through a mouthful of pepperoni. That book took decades for revenge. Erin did it in 3 weeks. My phone buzzed. Sloan, Hannah's attorney wants to negotiate custody arrangements for the baby. I told them we'd discuss it once paternity is established, and she's resolved her legal issues with her former employer. They're not happy. I texted back. What are they offering? Joint custody, no child support either direction, clean split on marital assets. They want this resolved quietly. What do you think? I think we have all the leverage, and they have none. I think Hannah committed fraud and is in no position to make demands. I think we can get you a much better deal. But it's your call. I looked at the boxes stacked in what used to be my living room, at Maya and Nora eating pizza on the floor, at the life I was packing up and moving forward from. Hannah wanted to negotiate like this was a boardroom merger instead of the consequences of her own actions. Tell them we'll negotiate, I typed, after she pays back the stolen money and accepts whatever the DA decides about criminal charges. Then we'll talk custody. Sloan sent back a single emoji, a thumbs up followed by a fire. Maya raised her pizza slice. to new beginnings and better decisions. Nora clinked her beer bottle against it. To receipts and redemption. I joined in with my water bottle because I was too exhausted for alcohol. To whatever comes next. And somewhere across town, Hannah was probably having the worst day of her life while I was having pizza with my support team and planning a future that didn't include her. Funny how that works out. Moving into a smaller apartment when you're 34 feels like admitting defeat, like you're regressing back to your 20s, except now you have lower back pain and opinions about mortgage rates. But here's the thing nobody tells you about downsizing after a divorce. It's actually kind of liberating. My new place was a loft in the Pearl District, 800 square feet of exposed brick and hardwood floors that required significantly less maintenance than a whole house and provided infinitely more excuses to take naps. The first week was an adjustment. I had to relearn how to be a person who lived alone, who didn't check with anyone before ordering Thai food for dinner or binge-watching true crime documentaries until 3 a.m. I bought plants because the internet said plants help with mental health, then promptly killed 2 of them within a week because apparently I was better at destroying marriages than keeping ferns alive. The surviving succulent sat on my windowsill like a tiny green judge, silently critiquing my life choices. Maya visited on day 3 with a housewarming gift that turned out to be a coffee maker that cost more than my first laptop. "You can't rebuild your life on Folgers," she announced, setting it up on my counter like she was installing life support equipment. "You need the good stuff. The kind that makes you feel like you have your act together even when you absolutely don't." She wasn't wrong. That coffee maker became my therapist, my morning routine, my one consistent relationship that didn't end in fraud and public humiliation. I learned to make pour-overs and cold brew and espresso that didn't taste like regret. Small victories. By week 2, I'd accepted Donovan's consulting offer and found myself teaching ethics training to the same company that had employed my fraudulent ex-wife. The irony was so thick you could spread it on toast. I stood in conference rooms with PowerPoint presentations about expense reporting, red flags, and proper documentation procedures, while people nodded along and took notes like I was some kind of corporate fraud expert instead of just a guy who'd gotten really good at Excel during a mental breakdown. "You're actually good at this," Nora told me after sitting in on one of my sessions. "Like, genuinely good. You make compliance training entertaining, which should be impossible." "Sarcasm is a teaching tool," I said. "If I can make people laugh while explaining expense codes, they'll actually remember the information instead of just spacing out and checking their phones." The consulting gig paid well enough that I could afford the loft and still have money left over for things like therapy, actual therapy this time, not just coffee, and a gym membership I'd probably never use but felt obligated to purchase. I started working with a therapist named Dr. Patricia Chun, who specialized in betrayal trauma and had the most calming voice I'd ever heard. She could probably read a phone book and make it sound therapeutic. "Tell me about the elevator," she said during our first session, and I did. I told her about the ding, the doors opening, Hannah's face, the pregnancy test, the whole terrible sequence of events that had derailed my life like a train jumping its tracks. "And how did that make you feel?" she asked, which is apparently what all therapists ask, even though it's a cliche for a reason. "Like a faulty fire alarm," I said, using the same description I'd thought in the moment. "Loud and useless." "But you weren't useless," she pointed out. "You documented everything. You built a case. You held someone accountable for their actions. That's not useless, that's agency." Agency. I like that word. It sounded better than revenge or spite or any of the other terms people were using to describe what I'd done. Around week 3, I did something that surprised even me. I started a podcast. Not because I thought anyone would listen, but because Nora had mentioned that telling my story out loud might be therapeutic, and I figured if I was going to process trauma, I might as well do it with production value. I called it Floor 4 Stories because I'm nothing if not on brand, and the concept was simple. I'd tell my story with humor, then invite other people to share their own experiences with betrayal, messy breakups, and life generally kicking them in the teeth. Part therapy, part comedy, part, let's all acknowledge that being human is weird and painful, and sometimes you just have to laugh, or you'll cry forever. The first episode was just me, sitting in my loft with a decent microphone Maya had helped me set up, talking about the elevator, about Hannah, about the gala, about everything that had happened in the past month. I kept it anonymous, no real names except my own, No specific company details, just the facts delivered with enough sarcasm to make it entertaining instead of just depressing. I uploaded it on a Thursday night, sent the link to Maya and Nora, and went to bed assuming maybe 12 people would listen and 10 of them would be spam bots. By Friday morning, I had 300 downloads and 17 emails from people wanting to share their own stories. By Saturday, someone had shared it on Reddit, and I was up to 2,000 downloads with a waiting list of people who wanted to be guests. By Monday, some podcasting website had featured it in their Hidden Gems section, and I was fielding interview requests from other shows wanting to talk about corporate fraud and public accountability. You accidentally became a content creator, Nora said, scrolling through my analytics with the enthusiasm of someone who understood metrics. People love this. They're calling it cathartic and brutally honest, and the kind of story that makes you feel less alone in your own mess. I recorded episode 2 with a woman named Rachel who discovered her husband's affair through a forgotten Apple AirTag in his gym bag. Episode 3 featured a guy named Marcus who'd found out his wife was embezzling from their joint business account to fund a gambling addiction. Episode 4 was a woman named Jennifer. Yes, the same Jennifer from Hannah's book club, who shared her story about leaving a 20-year marriage after finding out her husband had an entire second family in another state. Each episode ended with the same question: what did you learn? Rachel learned to trust her instincts. Marcus learned that love doesn't mean blind trust. Jennifer learned that starting over at 50 is scary but possible. And me? I was learning that other people's stories made my own feel less heavy, like sharing the weight somehow made it easier to carry. The podcast became a routine. Record on Mondays, edit on Tuesdays, release on Wednesdays, field emails, and guest requests the rest of the week. It gave my days structure, purpose, something to focus on besides the fact that my marriage had exploded and my ex-wife was currently under investigation by both her former employer and the district attorney's office. Speaking of Hannah, she'd been quiet since the gala. No texts, no calls, no attempts at contact beyond the formal communication happening between our lawyers. Sloan had negotiated a settlement where Hannah would pay back the fraudulent expenses through a payment plan, accept full responsibility for the fraud, and agree to minimal custody arrangements once paternity was established and her legal issues were resolved. The DA was still deciding whether to press criminal charges, which apparently depended on whether the company wanted to pursue it aggressively or just cut their losses. She got off easy, Maya said during one of her visits, now officially on maternity leave and approximately 73 months pregnant. She should be in jail. She's unemployed, publicly humiliated, facing potential criminal charges, pregnant with a guy who ghosted her the second things got complicated, and has to explain all of this to her future kids someday, I pointed out. I don't know if I'd call that easy. Fair point. Still, jail would have been satisfying. I couldn't entirely disagree. Liam, by the way, had vanished like a magician's assistant, but with less smoke and more cowardice. He'd apparently quit his job the day after the gala and moved to Seattle or San Francisco or some other city that starts with S, where tech bros go to reinvent themselves after their lives implode. Hannah was dealing with the pregnancy alone, which felt like poetic justice, but also kind of sad in a way I wasn't ready to fully examine yet. My life settled into a new rhythm. Consulting work 3 days a week, podcast recording and editing the other days, therapy on Thursdays, coffee experiments on weekends. I got better at keeping plants alive. Turned out the secret was just watering them and not treating them like metaphors for my failed marriage. I joined a gym and actually went sometimes. I started reading again, books that had nothing to do with self-help or healing and everything to do with just enjoying a story. The loft stopped feeling temporary and started feeling like home. Like mine. Like a space I'd built for myself instead of compromise and shared decisions. 6 months later, I still notice elevators. Can't help it. Every time I hear that ding, some part of my brain does a quick threat assessment like I'm a veteran with PTSD, except my war zone was a hospital corridor and my enemy was infidelity. But here's the weird thing. When the doors close now, I smile. Not because I'm happy about what happened. I'm not some kind of psychopath who enjoys trauma, but because I survived it. More than survived it, actually. I built something new from the wreckage. My loft has better light than the house ever did, even if my plants are still struggling with my commitment issues. The podcast hit 10,000 subscribers last month, which is apparently enough to qualify as moderately successful in the world of people talking into microphones about their life disasters. I've interviewed everyone from a woman who discovered her husband's affair through a joint Amazon account to a guy who found out his wife was catfishing him as someone else online just to see if he'd cheat. Humanity is messy and weird, and I'm documenting it one episode at a time. The consulting work with Donovan's company turned into a regular gig. I'm essentially the guy they call when they need someone to explain compliance in a way that doesn't make people want to fake their own deaths to escape the training session. I've developed a reputation for being the fraud guy who makes spreadsheets entertaining, which is not the legacy I imagined at 25, but I'll take it. Hannah texts sometimes. Brief messages that read like leftover wrapping paper from a gift nobody wanted. Apology fragments that don't quite form complete sentences. I know I messed up. I should have been honest. I hope you're doing okay. I don't reply because what would I even say? Thanks for the emotional devastation. It really helped me discover my true calling as a podcast host. Some bridges aren't worth rebuilding. They're just kindling for the fire that keeps you warm while you build something better. She had the baby, by the way. A girl. I know because Maya told me, having somehow maintained a bizarre surveillance network that would make the CIA jealous. Hannah's living with her parents now, working some administrative job that probably pays a fraction of what she made before she decided corporate fraud was a good hobby. Liam never came back. Last I heard through the rumor mill that refuses to leave me alone, he's engaged to someone else in San Francisco. Apparently, his desire for instant family only applied when it was convenient. I don't feel bad for Hannah. That probably makes me a terrible person, but I've made peace with it. Dr. Chin says I'm allowed to protect my own emotional well-being, that empathy doesn't require self-sacrifice. I'm still working on believing that, but I'm getting there one therapy session at a time. Maya had her baby, a boy she named Dylan who screams like he's auditioning for a death metal band, but is otherwise perfect. I'm Uncle Aaron now, which comes with responsibilities like changing diapers and pretending to understand baby talk and buying tiny shoes that cost more than adult shoes for reasons that defy economic logic. Maya insists I'm Dylan's favorite person, which I know is a lie because babies don't have preferences beyond feed me and stop making that noise, but I appreciate the sentiment. Nora's running a podcast network now, which happened accidentally when she helped me launch Floor 4 Stories and realized she was good at the business side of content creation. She's managing 6 shows, mine included, and making enough money to quit her corporate job and work from home in pajamas. Living the dream, as they say. Sloane's on a billboard near the waterfront advertising her services with the tagline, "Ruthless but fair," which is both accurate and slightly terrifying. She sends me a Christmas card every year now, which feels like being pen pals with a very efficient shark. The divorce finalized 3 months ago. Clean break, split assets, no alimony because Sloane is a wizard and Hannah wasn't in a position to negotiate. I signed the papers in Sloane's office, walked out, and felt nothing except maybe relief. Like closing a book I'd already finished reading. I'm dating again, which is exactly as awkward as it sounds. Turns out my ex-wife committed corporate fraud, and I exposed it at a charity gala, is not a great first date story, so I've learned to lead with literally anything else. I went out with a graphic designer named Emma last week who laughed at my jokes and didn't seem traumatized by my emotional baggage. We're getting coffee next weekend. Baby steps. The elevator in my building goes to the 8th floor, which feels appropriately symbolic. Higher than the 4th floor where everything fell apart, high enough to have a view, low enough to still feel grounded. I ride it every day, sometimes multiple times, and it's just an elevator. Just a metal box that moves between floors. No hidden revelations, no life-changing disasters. Just transportation. I learned that betrayal can be a horrible teacher, but also an effective motivator. That spreadsheets are therapeutic. That revenge is a dish best served with proper citations and a backup drive. That starting over at 34 isn't failure. It's just a plot twist in a story that's still being written. The elevator dinged. I stepped inside, pressed 8, and watched the doors close on another normal day in a life I never planned, but somehow ended up building anyway. Full of bad jokes, better coffee, podcasting equipment, and zero tolerance for people who think lying is easier than honesty. Hannah got her elevator moment that changed everything. Now I'm having mine, except mine goes up. 6 months later, I still notice elevators. Can't help it. Every time I hear that ding, some part of my brain does a quick threat assessment like I'm a veteran with PTSD, except my war zone was a hospital corridor and my enemy was infidelity. But here's the weird thing. When the doors close now, I smile. Not because I'm happy about what happened. I'm not some kind of psychopath who enjoys trauma, but because I survived it. More than survived it, actually. I built something new from the wreckage. My loft has better light than the house ever did, even if my plants are still struggling with my commitment issues. The podcast hit 10,000 subscribers last month, which is apparently enough to qualify as moderately successful in the world of people talking into microphones about their life disasters. I've interviewed everyone from a woman who discovered her husband's affair through a joint Amazon account to a guy who found out his wife was catfishing him as someone else online just to see if he'd cheat. Humanity is messy and weird, and I'm documenting it one episode at a time. The consulting work with Donovan's company turned into a regular gig. I'm essentially the guy they call when they need someone to explain compliance in a way that doesn't make people want to fake their own deaths to escape the training session. I've developed a reputation for being the fraud guy who makes spreadsheets entertaining, which is not the legacy I imagined at 25, but I'll take it. Henna texts sometimes. Brief messages that read like leftover wrapping paper from a gift nobody wanted. Apology fragments that don't quite form complete sentences. I know I messed up. I should have been honest. I hope you're doing okay. I don't reply because what would I even say? Thanks for the emotional devastation. It really helped me discover my true calling as a podcast host. Some bridges aren't worth rebuilding. They're just kindling for the fire that keeps you warm while you build something better. She had the baby, by the way. A girl. I know because Maya told me, having somehow maintained a bizarre surveillance network that would make the CIA jealous. Henna's living with her parents now, working some administrative job that probably pays a fraction of what she made before she decided corporate fraud was a good hobby. Liam never came back. Last I heard through the rumor mill that refuses to leave me alone, he's engaged to someone else in San Francisco. Apparently, his desire for instant family only applied when it was convenient. I don't feel bad for Hannah. That probably makes me a terrible person, but I've made peace with it. Dr. Chin says I'm allowed to protect my own emotional well-being, that empathy doesn't require self-sacrifice. I'm still working on believing that, but I'm getting there one therapy session at a time. Maya had her baby, a boy she named Dylan who screams like he's auditioning for a death metal band, but is otherwise perfect. I'm Uncle Aaron now, which comes with responsibilities like changing diapers and pretending to understand baby talk and buying tiny shoes that cost more than adult shoes for reasons that defy economic logic. Maya insists I'm Dylan's favorite person, which I know is a lie because babies don't have preferences beyond feed me and stop making that noise, but I appreciate the sentiment. Nora's running a podcast network now, which happened accidentally when she helped me launch Floor 4 Stories and realized she was good at the business side of content creation. She's managing 6 shows, mine included, and making enough money to quit her corporate job and work from home in pajamas. Living the dream, as they say. Sloane's on a billboard near the waterfront advertising her services with the tagline, "Ruthless but fair," which is both accurate and slightly terrifying. She sends me a Christmas card every year now, which feels like being pen pals with a very efficient shark. The divorce finalized 3 months ago. Clean break, split assets, no alimony because Sloane is a wizard and Hannah wasn't in a position to negotiate. I signed the papers in Sloane's office, walked out, and felt nothing except maybe relief. Like closing a book I'd already finished reading. I'm dating again, which is exactly as awkward as it sounds. Turns out my ex-wife committed corporate fraud, and I exposed it at a charity gala. Is not a great first date story, so I've learned to lead with literally anything else. I went out with a graphic designer named Emma last week who laughed at my jokes and didn't seem traumatized by my emotional baggage. We're getting coffee next weekend. Baby steps. The elevator in my building goes to the 8th floor, which feels appropriately symbolic. Higher than the 4th floor where everything fell apart. High enough to have a view, low enough to still feel grounded. I ride it every day, sometimes multiple times, and it's just an elevator. Just a metal box that moves between floors. No hidden revelations, no life-changing disasters. Just transportation. I learned that betrayal can be a horrible teacher, but also an effective motivator. That spreadsheets are therapeutic. That revenge is a dish best served with proper citations, and a backup drive. That starting over at 34 isn't failure. It's just a plot twist in a story that's still being written. The elevator dinged. I stepped inside, pressed 8, and watched the doors close on another normal day in a life I never planned, but somehow ended up building anyway. Full of bad jokes, better coffee, podcasting equipment, and zero tolerance for people who think lying is easier than honesty. Hannah got her elevator moment that changed everything. Now I'm having mine, except mine goes up.